let's start.
I have to make the introduction. So yeah. Hi, Delila. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing, Nathan?
Good. Good to have you here.
Great to be here, always.
Okay. So I have to make the introductions for people that don't necessarily know you. Right? So you are a award-nominated radio presenter, a prominent public speaking figure, and you have immense experience in television and media. You did your bachelor's in communications at NUST, and you're also an author, last but not least.
That is very, very accurate. Not sure bringing up my whole CV.
Yeah, if there's like a connection between all of those facets, it's almost like you have a fascination for words and communication.
Yes, that definitely is the connection. I love talking.
Yeah.
It's a good thing and a bad thing because growing up, I've had a couple of friends where I'd meet their parents, and because I'm such an outspoken person, their parents would be like, "Oof, this one, stay away from her." And then eventually, obviously, in my growing up, I've learned to, be a little bit more mindful and wise and picky about my speaking and where I can truly go all out and where I can limit my speech and how to speak, where to speak in the manner that you're speaking. So sort of identifying my target audience, identifying the audience that I'm speaking to, and how to really craft a message that can reach them positively.
Yeah.
But speaking has always been at the core of me, be it as a child, growing up. It's always been part of my life.
Yeah.
In a professional space. I mean, we all speak.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Are you right-handed or left-handed?
I am right-handed.
Right-handed. Yeah. So I think was that the whole goal, like playing to your strong suits? Because most of the time it's like people that excel in the stuff they do is they sort of discover a facet that they have. Let's say for you it's speaking, and then you sort of just turn that into a career because it feels natural to you. It's not like a job necessarily.
I would not say so. It didn't happen naturally. A couple of people in my life had to point it out for me to actually realize it. So growing up, when I was in primary school, I wanted to be a doctor. Well, first I wanted to be a nurse, then I wanted to be a doctor. Then I got into high school, I wanted to study accounting. Then I was like, actually I'm better off as a scientist.
A scientist?
Yeah. And then I remember as I was getting closer to matriculation, and I was applying for universities, and I'm like, I'm so lost. I genuinely don't know what I want to become, because everything was so brief. I want to be a doctor for like a year, 2 years, and then it's the next thing, then it's the next thing. But there was nothing that stuck for a really long time. And my sisters made it clear to me at that point in time, they're like, yeah, but you know that in all those environments that you've been in, the differences of you want to be a doctor, you want to be a nurse, you want to be a scientist or an accountant, you've been saying that you want to be those things, but you've been acting towards the profession of a professional speaker, a radio presenter, a television personality. Because I started doing TV when I was grade 5.
Grade 5?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and then I did TV in grade 5. I did it as well, like throughout the remainder of my primary school years. Did it throughout my high school years. When I joined varsity, I was like, fine, let's try something different. I chose radio, which is also in the media environment. So they were like, you clearly have a thing for the radio industry, or rather the media industry. So maybe gravitate towards that. So did like a little bit of research. Didn't really want to become a journalist. So studied communications, and here we are now.
Nice. Okay. So you made a choice after high school.
Yes.
And then you chose communications.
Yep.
This communication, what does that entail? Is it like, what do they focus on mostly?
As a communications officer, or rather PR practitioner, public relations practitioner, you're basically the company's spokesperson. So should the world break down and everybody's just freaking out, you'd be the one to stand up and say, okay, in our organization, in our house, this is what's currently happening. This is how we're going to move from point A to point B. Don't freak out. It's going to be okay. So you are the key person between the organization as well as the public, and you need to be able to bridge that gap, because every organization has its clients and its target audience. But because everyone is so technical in their role, the accountants do what they need to do, the technicians do what the technicians need to do, whoever it is that's on the ground will open up new products and services, but there needs to be someone dedicated to communicate what the internal environment looks like and how the external environment benefits from this.
Yeah.
So you're basically the company spokesperson, and because I like speaking, like that's perfect.
Nice. Okay, so mainly your family sort of like lured you into, or maybe like opened your eyes to what you really are. You know,
Yes.
and for you to do that. What do you think about the whole nurture versus nature thing? Because some people say, like, they would say, like, some people have gifts, right? They would say, oh, this person is gifted. But then the thing is, what does that mean objectively? Like, biologically, like, what does a gift mean? You could say, some people is gifted at playing soccer.
Yeah.
They're like a soccer gene, a basketball gene, not really. But the nurture side of thing is your environment, your family
Cultivated you.
cultivated you. Do you feel like you speaking is something that's came innately to you, or is it because of how you were brought up as a kid?
I would say it takes both, and I've experienced both. Because, like I said, I loved to talk. I've always loved to talk, and I've always positioned myself in spaces where I'm either in front of the mic or I'm the main person doing the speaking, right? But at the same time, because of that nurture element, I was able to be groomed into a position where I'm more calculated about how I speak, when I speak, where I speak. So I won't just jump up and speak anytime you give me a mic. Sometimes I'm wise enough to say, you know what, this is not really my opportunity, but maybe get the next person in the room to handle this conversation, because I'm not the befitting person, right? So it does definitely take both. And I think for me, it was more nurture than nature, because if I can think of my early life, I come from a very big family, and my family talks a lot. So sometimes, because you come from such a big family, it's hard to get your voice out there. And I didn't really like fighting for an opportunity to speak. I'm more of the person that if it comes to me, it comes to me. I don't have to fight for it. If it's meant to be, it will happen. So because that's my personality and I come from a big family, it means oftentimes they'll do all the speaking and I'll be like, I'm good. I'll just be the quiet one in the corner. But then eventually they had to nurture me into an environment where I own my words, where I'm in positions to do more speaking.
Yeah.
So it definitely takes both, and it took both for me.
To both for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So you came from high school, university. What was your first speaking job after university? Did you start at university already, or was it after you graduated?
My first speaking job is in the one that paid me to speak.
Yeah.
Wow. This is hard to remember.
Really?
Probably in my first year of varsity. I think in my first year of varsity, genuinely can't remember.
Really?
But the earliest one I remember is when I was director of ceremonies for Mr. and Miss Nast. Don't remember which year it was though. But I also feel like I've spoken before in a public setting before that.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Really? I'm trying to get the link between it being a passion and a hobby to actually converting into like a career. You know, sometimes you find people that they're so passionate and they're so good or gifted towards something, but then they just keep it to themselves, right? But
Yeah.
how did that bridge happen for you to move from just yourself to actually like putting your lamp on the table? So to
The
speak?
bridge came when I started radio. Because when I started radio, because I'm constantly on air, more and more people said, oh, I like your voice. I like how articulate you are. I love how you present yourself. You know, maybe you should, do you have time to? But even through those places, I'd still be like, I'm good, thank you very much. And then I got an extreme push from my then station manager, my first station manager, who was like, no, you're doing this. I've already signed you up for it. And I did it. I was freaking out. But then eventually I was like, I could do this more often. So I started taking it really serious when I was, I think the second half of my first year. That should have been 2018, 2018, yeah. The second half of 2018 was when I really started taking it serious.
2018. If I'm a young student, let's say I'm in university, right, and I have this desire to speak, and I feel like I can sort of take it on as a career, how do I approach the industry? How do I approach the industry and sort of like sell myself, so to speak?
First and foremost, you want to identify your target audience. Who are you speaking to? Who do you love speaking to? Who are you comfortable speaking to? I don't necessarily put myself in the middle of concerts and events like that when it comes to public speaking or even being a director of ceremonies. So I put myself in more professional settings. So your year-end functions, perhaps your corporate gatherings and corporate events, your staff awards. I put myself in settings like that because I feel most comfortable when I'm in a calm environment while I speak. I want people to actually listen to me speaking and not just have a crowd screaming wild like they just don't care. I want you to pay attention. So those are the environments that I put myself into. Those are the environments that I believe I thrive into as well. So first and foremost, identifying who it is you speak to, who it is you're comfortable speaking to is very important, because that will allow you to decide if you're going to go in the concept route or in the corporate industry route. If you're taking the concept route, I would say event organizers are the main people to approach first and foremost. When I took the corporate route, and I was still in varsity at the time, I would see posters come out about events coming up, and at the bottom there's a contact detail to buy tickets or for more information, and I'd constantly pop an email or do a phone call to that particular contact information and call and be like, oh, my name is Delila. I saw this event is happening. Do you have a director of ceremonies? Do you have someone in mind already? Can I send you my card, my portfolio, so you take a look at it? Even if you don't consider me for this event, maybe the next event when you need a director of ceremonies, you can consider me.
Yeah.
So that's where I started. I think that worked very well for me because it built up a contact list that was quite extensive, that people would actively start reaching out and be like, hey, you called me once upon a time. But outside of that, you need to continuously put yourself in environments where you speak, because people book you more when they see you in action, because then they can trust you. So simply just calling them and saying, I'm a director of ceremonies, how do you know that I'm good at what I do? But if I offer to, say, host a student's award ceremony, and in that crowd of students, their parents are also sitting there. Their parents are employees at organizations, they are CEOs, they are people that sit in meeting rooms and make recommendations and suggestions. So the more I put myself in a space like that, their parents would perhaps go back to the office on a Monday and be like, I saw someone speaking at the other award ceremony. Yeah. Maybe we should get that person to handle that. So things like that, things like getting into it as a profession, either TV or radio is also a really great way. Attaching yourself to an NGO is also a pretty good way, and saying, okay, I know that you're a nonprofit. I want to be able to volunteer some hours of my time, but this is the manner that I volunteer my hours. I'd volunteer myself as a public speaker to any function that you decide to host this year. Call me up, I'm there. I'll be your director of ceremonies, or I'll be your communications officer. I'll be your point of contact for X and O. I think that's a great way to position yourself.
Nice. You obviously get to meet a lot of people as a radio presenter, as a TV personality. If you were to point out, let's say, free skills, people skills that you've sort of like picked up, what do those skills be?
That is a difficult one. 3 people skills. Smiling goes a long way. And I say this because even in the environments where I'm interviewing someone and I'm receiving them into my studio space, I need to be able to make you comfortable. Smiling makes you comfortable instantly, because then it tells the next person that you are approachable. So simply smiling, being communicative to say, okay, so this is what's going to happen, this is how we're going to continue from this point forward, but also being communicative in the sense of, if you are in a networking function, perhaps, right, and I'm just there attending as a guest, and Nathan, you walk up to me and you're sort of smiling a little bit, and I'm like, I don't really know who this person is. My first instinct is to smile. Okay. So the first thing I'll do is smile to alert you that I'm approachable. And you'd probably come to me and say, oh, I know you from radio. That tells me, oh, great, because I didn't I didn't know you, but clearly
Yeah.
you know me, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then communicative is in, I would always ask you, oh, so what's your name? And how often do you listen? So really bridging that awkwardness gap. I often find myself in environments where I meet a lot of big names, right? And when I meet those big names, I know that I would smile like a geek because I'm like, oh my gosh, it's
Yeah.
Nathan. But deep down, I also know Nathan doesn't know me. So I can't expect him to already reciprocate my energy. But my
Yeah.
first three things of approaching Nathan would be like, oh, hi, Nathan. My name is Delila. I'm from this particular organization and I'm a fan of your work because of A, B, and C. That way you don't have to
I
go
see.
through that awkwardness of
Yeah.
asking my name, trying to find out how I know you, or if we just know each other from social media. Or, I mean, social media can be such a space where you've seen this person's face all the time that when you're in the public setting, you get confused sometimes. Like, do I know this person? Have I actually had a physical interaction with them? Or is it just a picture that I've seen floating around? So, smiling and being communicative. I only have two. Those are the two.
How did you move into the writing? When was the first time you actually wrote something? Actually, so you published a book like 2, 3 years, 4 years ago.
4 years
4 years
ago,
ago.
yes.
Yeah. Was that your first book that you've written?
Yes, that was my first book. But the first time I wrote, well, that was my first published book.
Yeah.
But I've written a couple of books before then. I picked up writing very late in my teenage years. I was, I believe, 17, and it started off as a bit.
Okay.
I don't even remember what was on the line,
Yeah.
but there was something really cool on the line that I desperately wanted to win.
A bet between you and a friend.
A friend of mine, yeah, a really good friend of mine, and she's always been such a strong writer. So because it was, she brought up the bit, and at the time I was none the wiser because she was a better writer than I was. I've never picked up a pen or never typed up anything before then, but she was a better writer. And to position herself in a manner that she actually wins this, she said, well, whoever writes a chapter of a nonfiction book would be able to win this particular prize. And I was like, let's do it. So I didn't win, obviously, because she's a better writer. I didn't win, but after writing the chapter, because we were writing on Wattpad, which is like this online writers platform, it's a huge community, and it's an international community of writers that would just sort of freely publish their work there. So after publishing the first chapter, it was basically of whoever gets the most likes on their chapter gets to win the prize. So I didn't finish the chapter in time. Granted, I didn't win the prize, but I liked the feeling of writing, so I continued, and then I eventually wrote a book about it. I think I wrote 3 books on Wattpad before I was confident enough to publish, yeah, and then eventually published the 4th book, which is titled Uncalled, yeah.
Cool. It's a fiction book.
Yes.
Fiction. The question with fiction is, for a long time, I couldn't read fiction because to me it was like, I found it's like watching a movie. I would see as if, for me, books were like a place where I can get information from. So,
Okay.
like, if it's fiction books, it's almost like I can watch a movie, right? But then that was me like a very long time ago. And then after a while, it's like when I started writing as well, it's like I first made a decision to write a non-fiction book. So I'm writing the non-fiction book, and at some point it gets boring because you want writing to just flow, right?
Yeah.
And now with non-fiction, you so that I have to stop, research, and try and find stuff, that you just don't want it to come from you, right? You want to have facts that backs up the stuff you're writing about. Then while I was writing that, in my free time, I started writing like a non-fiction book, and that would just come easily and
Yeah.
easily. But the difference is like the non-fiction book. It's not that it's fake necessarily. It's just that it's sort of like a different way of saying the truth. Like non-fiction. I mean,
Fiction.
non-fiction.
Yeah.
Non-fiction is like things that happen.
Yeah.
And you use those things to make a narrative, but with with fiction.
With fiction.
Always get interested.
They can be very confusing, yeah. With fiction.
With fiction. Yeah, so with fiction, it's like, it feels like you pulling stuff out of your head, but you also trying to say the truth. It's just that the events that you're using did not objectively happen. So then that
Yeah.
gave me a different perspective. Like, So I started reading like a lot of fiction books because I'm sure the author has a deep message they're trying to relay.
Yeah.
Even though you'd say you can't really say the stories are fake because it comes from your mind. Your mind is a real thing. So yeah. So I started reading a lot of fiction books. Do you have the same sort of like
Relationship to it.
relationship to it?
I think mine was actually the opposite. TV for me was to get information.
TV.
Yeah, so I didn't like watching a lot of series and movies. I'd watch more documentaries. I'd watch Nat Geo, and I'd learn all about. I'd watch CNN and BBC News, and. So television for me was get information, and then books for me was an escape from reality. So more on the entertainment side. I do understand what you mean about nonfiction feeling a little bit boring from time to time. When I read my first nonfiction book, I felt like someone was preaching to me, and I was like, well, I don't really need you to preach to me right now. I know the difference between good and bad. So I also had to teach myself how to read nonfiction, and now I love it. I can embrace nonfiction, right? But with fiction, it's always been an understanding that, yes, the author has a deeper message to send, but they've got a creative way to send it. They've got a way to just sort of hook you and entice you and keep you reading for longer. And I loved that. And so most of the times I would read fiction to be able to navigate the real world, actually. So through fiction, I learned what a bad boy is and why to stay away from it in high school.
Right.
And I learned what a nerd means and why you should stick closer to a nerd, because then you're going to get A's in school. So I strategically, I guess, used fiction to be able to navigate my real world a lot better. So yeah, for me it was definitely the opposite.
You think reading helps you, with your communication a lot?
Definitely, yes. I'm a slow reader, and oftentimes fast readers frown upon slow readers because readers brag about how much they read. They would finish 6 books in a year, and oh my gosh, we're only 6 months into the year, I've already finished my 5th book. And I'm like, I'm still on book number 1. In fact, the book that I just finished reading, it took me a year and 3 months to finish it.
Serious?
And it's Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda. And I love Chimamanda. She's such a well-spoken person. And she's so articulate. And so when I got the book, I was like, oh, I'm gonna read it in like a month. It didn't take me a month. It took me a year and 3 months to read it. But it's because I'm a really slow reader, because I almost want to analyze every single text. And so when I come across a word that I don't really know, I'd go in the dictionary and I'd search it up, and I'd write the meaning of that word down, and I'd practice that word over and over again, and I've added a new word to my vocabulary. So reading definitely improved my speaking, but I think it's also because I'm just a really slow reader. So I fully absorb words as well. So yeah.
I don't know, with me it's like, I used to be that guy, like 5 books a year. So I try and read a book as quickly as I can, just to get, a pile of books under, like, I've read so much books. But it's like, once I read it the first time, and I come back a second time, most of the time, it used to feel as though I've never read it. It's like, might I finish this book? So reading slowly, you get to fully understand what the writer is trying to say. Sometimes you sort of have to be in that vibe of the writer to know, okay, what he or she trying to say here. So reading slow is actually the best way to read, I think. As long as you want, the whole purpose of the book is you want to understand what the book is trying to say. It's not just to finish it.
Exactly. So whatever pace you decide to take with it, I guess it's based on every individual. I think I definitely read a lot more books when I was younger because I had a lot more free time in my schedule. Now it's balancing radio, it's balancing TV, it's balancing the corporate communications environment, it's balancing family and friends and travel. So I don't always have the time to read. So sometimes I'd rather just put on a Netflix series and just call it a day. But when I do read, I'm very, very analytical about my reading. And not just analytical in the sense of what is the author trying to say, but what does the character feel? So I give life to the character themselves as well. Try to give the character a personality of themselves to say, okay, so if this particular character is going through this life in this manner, did the writer portray the character's portfolio and personality correct when they did this particular action? Was it in character or was it out of character?
Yeah.
Yes, maybe it's also because I'm a writer that I can be hyper analytical about it, but yeah, that's me in my reading environment. I'm very critical, very analytical, very slow, and I just try and soak it and absorb it all in.
Yeah. What inspired you to write a book Unquote? Like, what's the inspiration?
I wouldn't necessarily say I was inspired. I would say I was just very orig.
What if that's in English? What's the word?
How do you translate it? I'm a liker of things.
Yeah.
Probably not the best way to translate it.
Yeah.
I don't know how to translate it, but
Inquisitive, I think. Maybe, I don't know.
yeah, very Dora the Explorer vibes. I just like trying new things all the time. So I wrote a couple of books on Wattpad, and then I wondered, what would it take to write a book like in that I can physically publish out? Like, can I do that? And I figured, why couldn't I? So I just did it. There wasn't a deep underlying notion to it. Yes, there is a deep underlying meaning to the book, but I could have easily just kept it as an online book.
Yeah.
Right? I could have just as easily kept it on Wattpad like all my other books. But with this one, I was just like, I want to see how difficult it is to publish a book. And I published the book. Wasn't that difficult?
Yeah. Are we going to see any more books soon?
No.
Really?
Not until I'm like 75.
75.
If you're lucky, maybe earlier.
75, that's pushing it too far.
That's like, what, 50 years from now? But when I wrote my first book, because it wasn't that deep, when it was initially printed and when I read the first copy for the first time and I saw my mom reading it and I was like, I feel some type of way about you reading me talking about passion and he kissed me and you know. So that made me feel very, very uncomfortable that my parents read something like that. But also I just felt like I was a little bit, and maybe I'm just being hard on myself, but I really felt like I was a little bit immature in my writing. So I'd like to take some time to I am writing still, but I'm keeping that to myself. And when I'm 75, I'll be retired, traveling the world, living my best life, have a lot of free time on my hands, and I'll probably be bored enough to say, okay, you know what? Let's push out another book. Maybe, yeah.
Okay. Wow, 75.
Maybe.
How long do you want to live, though? If you had a choice, like what? Would you want to reach 120, 100? I feel like you get too old.
I would.
It doesn't make sense anymore.
My ideal, and I've been called very dark for thinking this, but my ideal lifespan would be to tap out at 50.
50?
Yeah.
So when you say 75, you're basically saying...
If I make it to 75.
that's like the gift to life. Like, thank you. Here's a book.
Here's a book. Since you gave me an extra, here's the book. But I think my ideal lifespan is 50. I've got mixed emotions about this from people, because people are like, yeah, but your life truly begins at 30 when you are financially stable, geographically stable, relationship-wise as well. You're a little bit more settled at the age of 30. You know what you want to be. You've got your ducks in a row for it. So if your life only truly starts at 30 and you want to tap out at 50, that means you've only lived for 20 years. But I just feel like anything other is just a little bit too long.
50 is young. I'm surprised.
I feel like 50 is good, because by then I'd be a CEO. I'd go out strong. How CEO, Forbes 30 under 30. I've got all these and then peace out, world. But at the end of the day, it's not my call to make. It's the good Lord's decision. So however long He wants me to be on this earth is however long I'll be on this earth. If it's longer, I'm fine with that. If it's shorter, I'm fine with that as well. But if I had to, sign a contract to say this is how many years I want on this earth, I'd probably say 50.
Serious?
Yeah.
Ouch. How detailed is your vision board? Do you have like, I want to be this, 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 and this? Or do you just chase something and sort of let it lead you where it leads?
It's detailed.
It is detailed.
It is very detailed, which is painful because life doesn't always go as planned. So when it doesn't go as planned, oof, I get that. I get knocked down for quite a while. But the bounce back is always stronger, always bigger, always better. But it's very detailed. I believe in being very specific with your goals, in the sense of making them time bound, making them measurable, as well. So I'm very specific about my goals. When I joined television, it was a very calculated decision. I saw the advert play out on television and I said, I want to do this. And I want to do this before I leave my primary school years. And then eventually when I was in high school, I said, okay, fine. I'll take up radio when I leave high school. But that would be like a side hustle. And then I'll probably have a full-time job as an accountant or a nurse or a doctor or whatever. But I like to be very specific about my goals because then I can truly measure them and see if I've reached what I planned out for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I go through? Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right.
I did not realize.
It's no worries.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yes, I think being specific actually, the one time I noticed how specific, the importance of being specific is, it's like I watched the movie of Serena
You
Williams.
get in there.
Yeah. So I watched the movie of Serena Williams, the one that Will Smith played. Yeah. So the way the story is basically how specific Serena Williams' dad was. So he was like, since they were kids, he had a whole thing out.
Their whole life mapped out.
Their whole life mapped out. And I think like when you specify things, it actually gives you a direction to chase. When you just leave it to chance, it feels a bit. It feels a little bit too uncomfortable to be living like that. It's like you don't have a direction necessarily.
Yeah, I remember there was a year that I told myself, you know what, I'm just going to go with the wind.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do a vision board this year, be it mentally or like a physical vision board. I'm just going to see. I just want to see what the year brings me. That was the worst year of my life. Not worse in terms of feelings and emotions. I mean, yes, I had really good experiences because most of the experiences were unplanned and some really good things came in as well. But
it's like, where are we going?
To where we're going.
Yeah.
And it didn't feed into any long-term anything.
Yeah.
It was just a year of existing. And I didn't like how that felt. So I was like, clearly, planning and organizing works a little bit better for me. So I'm going to go into that direction. So vision boards for me, setting up goals for me are very important in that you just need to have a structure to say, okay, 5 years from now, this is where I see myself. Yes, you might not be there 5 years from now, but then that's why 5 years from now you can sit down again and say, okay, why did I not get to where I wanted to be? Did my desire change? Did my goal change? If it did, great. And to the direction that it changed to, is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's a good thing. Okay, fine. Then this is the new direction. Let's continue going with it. If you didn't achieve what you wanted to achieve, then you say, why didn't I achieve it? Did I associate myself with the wrong crowds and the wrong environments? Is there a way that I can come back and align myself positively? It's sort of like a proactive way to problem solving.
Yeah.
So before the problem arrives, and I think every organization as well just needs to have an idea to say, okay, 5 years from now, we want to be known as the biggest media house in Namibia. How do we get there? And then you start planning your route there. Yes, another media house could open up and they could completely overtake you and they could be the biggest in the next 5 years, right? But what can you do to change that? What can you do to go around that? Did your goal change? So I'm very specific about my goals. It's been frowned upon every once in a while because people are like, yeah, you need to live a little and just do. And I tried to just do. Didn't work out very well.
Yeah. They say aim for the stars and then you fall. I don't know how that saying goes, but you fall somewhere,
Yeah.
somewhere in between, yeah.
No.
Do you have hobbies, or is it like your passion blends in with your hobbies? Do you have that separation?
I do have separation, yes. My passion is speaking, public speaking, corporate communications, radio, television, the broadcasting environment, basically. That is my passion, right? And gracefully, I was one of the lucky ones to also be able to turn my passion into a career path. So that's also my career at the moment. But my hobbies include yoga, include recently found. So if 5 years from now I'm watching this podcast and I say I'm lying to myself, it's because clearly it didn't stick around for long. But as of the beginning of this year, it has been hiking.
Hiking.
Yeah,
Nice.
that was weird for me. I was like, hiking, really? Because I don't really like.
That's
I
my
never
favorite.
liked hiking. I tried it out once upon a
Really?
time when I was in varsity, and I hated it. And I was like, I'm never gonna do this ever again. But I picked it up again, and I'm actually kind of liking it. Don't judge me. Pole dancing.
Okay.
What else is my hobby? Painting. I'm not good at it, but I love it. But yeah, those are my hobbies.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, no, hobbies make you a well-balanced person. You know,
I guess you could say
you
so.
want to blow off some steam, you have this thing to do, and
Yeah.
you want to get back into work, and you have this thing to do.
It definitely also is a way to sort of, it's like you said, balance, right? And balance feeds into your creativity, because I work in a very creative environment. So I need to keep creative. So hobbies also include traveling, because then you're seeing other spaces and you're seeing how other people live, and you get to sort of pick out ideas from that and be able to integrate it in your day-to-day surroundings and settings, right? Be it in your work life or in your personal life. But I think hobbies also serve as an escape. We get stressed out so often, we get annoyed, people let us down, we hold grudges against them, we hold grudges against ourselves. But hobbies are one of those moments where you can spend time with yourself and really ask yourself, so why do I feel this way? What can I do about it? What can I change about it? And then at the end of the day, sort of realize that it wasn't that deep. So it's a way to happy yourself up
Yeah,
in a stressful reality. It's a way to happy yourself up.
yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. You interview a lot of people.
I
Yeah,
do.
a lot of different people, artists, serious people, fun people. Because usually you're on this side of the seat,
Yes.
metaphorically. Yeah, so if we switch for a second,
Ooh.
yeah, and for my safety, you only have 2 questions.
For your safety.
For my safety, yeah.
Oh snap. 2 questions.
2 questions, yeah.
2 questions. Okay. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Ouch. Where do I see myself in the next 5 years?
It's a loaded one, right?
It's a loaded one, yeah. Like I've never really articulated it before, but I think I tend to classify the things that I focus on into categories. So right now, I think what I'm focusing on is on my job, on my career. So that's basically software engineering, and on my passion, this is the podcast, conversations with different people. I'm also an author. Like I think last year, it's the first book I ever published, because I used to write a lot of things like poetry, songs, and books, and I would just have them in like a folder. Sometimes it would disappear. I'd have them in books, they would disappear, and I was like, let me just try and at least, get something out of this, because most of the time when you have a passion or a goal or a gift, I guess the whole point is for you to place it on the table, like you say, shine your light on the table, and I think the proclivity to keep it to yourself comes naturally, but it's like, yeah, I mean, if I'm a writer, if you're like a communicator like you, a writer,
Yeah.
you want to shade with people. That's the whole point, right?
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, so I think on the author side of things, I want to give that as much time as I can to see how far it can go. I think sometimes the motivation for me is just like, I know that the simplest formula to succeed in anything is like the effort you put in over the time frame that you
That's true.
that you do. Sometimes it's like when we see we have a flaw in a flaw that we want to fix, we get discouraged when it takes too long to fix it.
Yeah.
But it's like when everything takes time, like planting seeds take time. If you plant a seed today, you keep checking it tomorrow. It doesn't work like that.
So
It's
maybe
like
come back to it every other time.
every other time. Yeah, it's like, but also because we live in a tech world, we used to sending a text. The person replies in like 5 minutes. We
So
tend
fast
to,
paced, yeah.
yeah, fast food. We lost that patience. Yeah, so I like setting goals, or I like choosing things to focus on, and then I'm just super curious to see if I stick to this thing for like 2 years, what's gonna happen. If I stick to it for like 5 years, what's gonna happen. It's like that thing that says, like the Bible says, like in every work there is profit. So every single work you're doing has a benefit to it. So like the compounding effect of sticking to something for 5 years really sort of excites me. Sometimes I wish if I had a superpower, it's like I could choose to do something and then just fast forward time, 5 years later and then see what happens after.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get what you mean. I definitely,
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. And then, wow, what would the last question be?
Question number 2. Final question.
What does an ideal interview look like for you? Like, what sort of environment, setting, and how should the conversation flow for you to walk away and be like, that was a good one?
People are different, and because what interests me a lot is the psychology of people and the paradigms in which they view life, basically.
Okay.
So I like diving deep into questions, like questions that people wouldn't necessarily tell people.
On a regular day, yeah.
Controversial questions they keep to themselves. I want to get to know people like that, like a little bit deeper.
Okay.
But right now, I think the whole setup is. I've noticed there's a lot of people that do interesting things, like you, for instance, and most of the time your story is kept with you and it's kept with the people close to you.
Maybe it's supposed to be kept that way.
Maybe, but inspiration is how most of us change.
That's true.
If I was living in a farm somewhere, would always want to gravitate to the one that's excelling in some way, and that's where the ceiling ends. But until we see someone else, like how far they've pushed their ceiling, then we go, oh, we get inspired, and everyone wants to sort of gravitate to where you are. So the whole idea was to get to dive deeper into like the stories of different people, because you want people to look at you and be like, oh, I'm also in like stage 1 of her story. Let me just keep doing what she did, or she didn't give up. Let me, if I stick to this for like 2 years, or if I stick to the things that I like and that I love, eventually I would end up. So to inspire people, I think that's the most important thing, basically.
Nice. You should do this more often.
We should,
Like me interviewing you, not the other part.
Yeah. No. I enjoyed interviewing.
Can I get a bonus question?
Sure.
Okay. Bonus question would be, right, if you had to relocate to any place in the world, well, any place in the universe, space included.
Canada.
Canada.
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's cold and I like the cold. I like to dress warm. I like to have jackets and stuff on.
Yeah, but there's a lot of places that are cold.
I know, but Canada is also not too crowded.
Good point.
It's not too crowded. It's not too city-like. I mean, it's obviously in some isolated places.
Very calm, collected.
Yeah, and they speak French. I like speaking French as well. And I don't know. It's just my ideal place. Like if I was to settle down, I'd want to go settle down there. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done.
Where would you go?
This is not what that is.
No, but it's back to me, right?
Oh, wow. Where would I go? I actually haven't found a place yet.
Really?
I genuinely haven't found a place yet.
What's the first place that came to your mind when you asked that question?
Where I am right now.
Namibia.
Yeah.
You love this place so much.
I love this country so much.
Okay.
So I oftentimes don't understand people that fully decide to relocate. I'm all about traveling. I love to travel. So I would travel. I'd pop into a different country, stay there for as long as I can stay there. And then my patience just kind of runs out, and I'm like, I miss this from home, and I want this from home. And why isn't this place like home? And home is this, and home is that. So then I come back home. But I think the reason why I travel is because I'm trying to understand why people feel the need to relocate. Because if I find myself in a country where I say, you know what, barely even thought of home, and like home is in the country, not home is in the people, because those will always be near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
Then, and that country must have something about it if it's strong enough to convince me to stay. Yeah.
Home is always home. Namibia is the best place you want to live in, and because it's super quiet, it's super clean,
Yes.
chilled. You know, you
Yes.
can go and come back. But yeah, I like variety. I get too bored quickly, so sticking to some place too long, yeah, that's a beautiful.
Hence why I
place.
travel.
That's why you travel.
Because I'm
That's why-
similar in that aspect.
Yeah, yeah.
In as much as I love this place, I'm also like, okay, cool. What else is there to see?
Exactly.
And then you bring a little travel element into it, and you've got like a beautiful salad.
Imagine you came in this world and you leave, but you've always been stuck in one place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind relocating for, say, a year, 2 years, give or take a couple, but for the majority of it all, this is home.
This is it's
Yeah.
a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Beautiful place. If you were to give an advice to your younger self, I think that's usually the last question I like to ask. What would you
Advice to my younger self. Can I give advice to myself now?
Yeah? Okay.
And then I'd pretend like this is my younger self. Should I look back to this video like
Yeah.
5-10 years from now? Because I think my younger self got the memo.
She got the memo.
She understood the assignment.
Nice.
I feel like she did
What she
the
had to do.
most
Yeah.
to get me to where I am today. And honestly, like I'm really glad of every step. Yes, there were punches and throws and everything, but she picked the right community, the right environment, the right tribe around her, and obviously good surroundings. And birds of a feather flock the same direction. So that's good. But if I was to give myself advice today for an older version of myself, I would say that I should just keep at it. Keep at the strategic approach, keep at the friendly approach and the familiar approach, because this world has a way of convincing you to be a certain way. And yes, that could be deemed as the mainstream way, but the mainstream way is not always the right way. This world, especially social media, has a way of sort of telling you you're going too slow. 25-year-olds in other worlds or in other countries rather, are buying houses and are millionaires. What are you doing? So it can put you in a position where you constantly feel like you're not doing enough. You've already pressed yourself to the limit and to the maximum. You are drained, exhausted. When you go to sleep, you're sleeping for 2 hours. You're waking up again to hustle or, fight for what you want and for the future that you envision for yourself. But because the world is so fast paced, you're thinking you're not doing enough and you should do more. But the advice that I give is that you're doing enough for the time period that you are, and that obviously you should stay within your tribe, because you won't be able to see the speck in your eye, but the next person will, and say, okay, fine, you know what, maybe move your hair to the side a little bit in this manner. And it's not because they are being judgmental, but it's rather because they're offering you positive advice and positive feedback. So that's the 2 pieces of advice I'd give an older version of myself. You're doing enough in the environment that you are at the moment, so be kind to yourself and keep with your tribe, because your tribe knows what's best for you, just like you know what's best for your tribe.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful. It was great having you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I think when you're 75, I'm going to come look at that.
Oh wow, that's a lot of pressure. I might turn 75 and decide, you know what?
No.
I don't feel like writing after all.
No, and you made us wait so long. It's 75.
I'll release something at 75. I'll make sure that I remember this day.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
But thank you for having me. It was truly a pleasure.
For sure. Right.